Okay, welcome everyone. As tonight we will finish Masechta Sanhedrin. I mean, that's really exciting. We will finish Masechta Sanhedrin tonight, except for the last few lines, which I will do Thursday morning by the Siyum B'chayris. We are co-sponsored in this journey through Sanhedrin. They got their money's worth, all these people. By the Rezepkowitz family in honor of their parents. We're co-sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Eddie Chazan. L'Refu Shalema for Yedidya Ben Penina, Shoshana Bas Penina, Simone Bas Rachel. We're co-sponsored by Binyamin Rivlin, Leila Nishmas Yitzhak Ben Avram Yudah Levi. We're co-sponsored by Shelley Zeitlin for his children, Eli, Orit, and Ora. We're sponsored by Berch Goasser, for Shalema, for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fadl, and Dov Meir ben Chaya Gittel, and Akos HaTov to the Shir. We are sponsored by Shalom Fogel, who is now in Eretz Yisrael and listening to us there. Yaakov Zev ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Siyam ben Yaakov Zev, that the Neshama should have an Aliyah. We are looking for a sponsor for Masechtas Makkos for tomorrow night. Step up to the plate, Rabbi Isai. Tomorrow night, Masechtas Makkos, delicious.
Get out that new whip.
Delicious opportunity. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. We are holding now on the bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph from Beis, Itmar, which is 5 lines from the bottom, 5 lines. A little technical, the Gemara now. Itmar, Mark is here. We got to get a little technical. Itmar, Rabbi Yochanan Aimer Cholkin Ir Achas L'Shnei Shvatim. We will divide one city into 2 Shvatim. That means at the time when Yoshua gave the land, one city could be divided to 2 Shvatim. While Reish Lakish Amar Ein Cholkin Ir Achas L'Bei Shvatim, we don't divide one city to 2 Shvatim. What do? We award it to, if the lot went through a city, we award it to the Shevet that has the majority of the city. The Rishonim say over here, the exception is Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was clearly divided between Yehuda and Binyamin. So, Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, it says, Achiyu madicheha me'oisa ir or me'oisa shevet. It has to be, the only time that there will be an ir anidachas is if the ones that subverted was from that city and from that shevet that they subverted. Now that implies that it could be someone from a different shevet still in the city. My love, afav gav de madicheha ba'oisa ir, even though it satisfies the first condition that the subverter was from the city, but but if it's from the same shevet as those that he subverted, yes. If not, that implies that there's another shevet in the city. So the Gemara says, Reish Lakish says, lie. It could be that somebody in the city is not from the shevet because his wife left him a Yerusha, and the wife was from a different shevet, because remember, the shevet goes according to the man, or he was from a different shevet, and it was given to him as a gift. Eisvei, Orim Tesha, in the doling out, the Shvatim had to give cities to the Levium. So, Orim Tesha, 9 cities, me'eshnei Shvatim ha'ela. From these 2 Shvatim, the 2 Shvatim, it says, the 2 Shvatim that gave out, they were from Yehuda and from Shimon. These 9 cities from Yehuda and from Shimon, how could you have 9 is not divisible by 2. My lav arba palga mehai, 4.5 from Yehuda, v'arba palga mehai, and 4.5 from Shimon. So you see that a Shevet could split a city, that half of it was Yehuda's and half of it was Shimon. You could divide one city to 2 Shvatim. Says the Gemara, no, arba mehai, v'chamesh mehai, 4 from one and 5 from the other. So the Gemara says, if that's so, then it should have said which one was giving the 4 and which one was giving the 5. It should have said that. Kasha. Now, I saw that when I turned the page over here and we saw that it was a smaller daf, Yaakov Warman, Mamish had sadness in his face. But don't worry, Yaakov, we are going to learn a blot and a half, so it's not going to be that small.
It never crossed my mind that you wouldn't.
Yeah, thank you. I saw something so incredible. Rav Mintz, in that sefer that I keep on quoting that he wrote about Rav Moshe, after he finished reminiscing about Rav Moshe, when he was in Toronto, he was Mishamish Rav Ruderman. So he wrote about Rav Ruderman, and he said that Rav Ruderman made a statement that in his mind, this is after the Chazon Ish and the Brisker Rav already passed away, in his mind, the Gadol Adar in Eretz Yisrael was the Chibina Rav. And he says over there in a footnote, something so incredible about the Chibina Rav, that when Mark will hear this, he'll feel a little small. But Mark, don't worry, when I hear this story, I feel like less than a sunflower seed. He said that the Chibina Rav was once by a chasana, and he was dancing very, very passionately by the chasana. He made a comment afterwards that while he was dancing, he chazered the Perek Ezel HaNeshech in his mind. The whole Perek Ezel HaNeshech. That's, to me, it's one of the hardest prakim in Shas. He chazered it while he was dancing. I mean, Ruvain doesn't look surprised, but, a guy like me, I'm very surprised. Imagine while you're dancing, well, if you could do that, it's worth going dancing every night. You could review the Perek Ezel HaNeshech.
Well, what do you think we're doing here every night?
It's absolutely unbelievable.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I don't know, but during Pesach, if you want, I have a Reb Moshe story too. It's a tremendous story. It's fast, but I'll let you know. My son-in-law was in Shabbos when he came to Muncie to his daughter. He was sick already. And we went to the mikveh, and the square Rebbe heard the Rosh Hashanah was in town, and he gave us matzah for the Reb Moshe, mitzvah matzahs, ever Pesach matzahs. And in that house, they never brought it in because he didn't believe in it, because before Pesach, about the Shishin, on Pesach, he's a chorus. So we were wondering what's going to be. So we gave it to Reb Moshe, and then the next day, because we made the minyan, he was sick, the Yavi. So when he came out, he said, "Oh yeah, Zoy Geshmak." He ate the matzahs.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't think in that house they would let it in.
Oh, for sure.
That's my Reb Moshe story.
Well, that's a good story.
Well, my son was Dave Greenfield. He was a Talmud of Reb David.
Okay. So anyway, says the Gemara, Ibayalahu, Hotchu me'elehen ma'u. What if they weren't Marshall didn't subvert them. They subverted themselves. And it was the majority of the city. Do they get the lesser death of beheading, or because they weren't subverted by another person, they get stoning like an individual? Mao, v'yadichu amarachmana, the Torah says that they have to be subverted, v'lo yishehutchu me'aleim, o idilma afilu hutchu me'aleim, even if they subverted themselves. Toshma, hidichuhu noshim v'ketanim. If they were subverted by women and minors, then they don't have a din of an iranidachas. But amai, even if you disregard the women and the children, lahave kurtchu me'aleim, so it should be like they subverted themselves. Says the Gemara, no. Hanach basar nafshai gerire. When they subverted themselves, they followed their own idea. Hani basar noshim v'ketanim geriri. These were subverted by women and children, and the Torah says only if you're subverted by anoshim, by men, and not by women and children. The Gemara doesn't answer this. What happens if they subvert themselves? Ad sheyudach ruba, until the majority is subverted. Now, so what do you do? Because you have to check, each one has to have Adam and Asra. So what do you do until you determine that there's a majority? What do you do with them in the meantime? Heichi Avdina, what do you do with them in the meantime? Rabbi Yehuda Danin v'chayvshin, they judge each individual, they lock them up, Danin v'chayvshin, and if there's a majority, they behead them. If not, they get skila. Amalei ula nimtza ata ma'ana esdinan shaleilu. That's inayadin. That's making a person wait. We don't believe in putting people on death row. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Ela amar ula danin v'cyclin. You give initially you give skila because initially they're only individuals. When you see it's a majority, then you give beheading. My Rabbi Yochanan Amar danin v'cyclin. Reish Lakish Amar no. What you do is you appoint many courts. Many courts. I mean, it can't be many because it's Dinei Nefashah, so it has to be 23. But you appoint many courts of 23. Ma'aben lahem batei dinim. And that way, you won't be ma'ana esadin. You won't keep them waiting. Says the Gemara, could you use a small circuit Supreme Court? Who? You take out the man, an individual man and an individual woman, you could bring to a small circuit Bezdin of 23. You can't take a majority of a city to a small circuit court. It has to go to the Bezdin Agadol Yerushalayim, the Sanhedrin. Ella ma'arben la batei dinim. You bring a lot of small circuit courts, uma'aynin b'dinehem, and you establish that there's a case, and then u'maskinan lahu, and then you bring them to the Bezdin Agadol, v'gamar l'dinei, and the dinayu, and if we determine that it's an iranidachas, v'katleilu, we give them the beheading. And it is appropriate that Barry should come in right by beheading, as Barry is holding on to his head. It's a good idea, Barry. The one day he's going to have a Purim custom where he's headless. That would be a good custom.
Ain't no costume.
Anyway.
Just because I don't use my head doesn't mean I'm headless. Come on, Marshall.
Hey, it's use it or lose it, Barry. What do you want?
Barry, headless would be an improvement. Now, chas v'shalom, your head should be attached to you for 120 years plus.
Is this where the Goyim came up with the story of the headless horseman?
Yeah, right. Harry Potter aficionados will know about Headless Nick, I think his name was. But anyway, I remember I wrote in my Sefer, Challenging Times, I wrote 2 chapters on Harry Potter, and Rav Leibich Becker did a book review on challenging times, and he scolded me for somebody of my level writing about Harry Potter. And I told him I disagreed with him, but that's okay. It was primarily a very good book review. So, and I love Rabbi Becker, so he's entitled to his mistakes. You should smite the inhabitants of the city. Now we learned, Tana Rabbanan, we learned, Hachamares, if there's a donkey caravan, or a vagamolas, or a camel caravan, Ha'iveres mimakim l'makim, that's passing through the city, Lanu b'seicha, if they stopped in the city, V'hutcha ima, and they sinned with them. In other words, they came, we know that a person is influenced by their environment. Im nishtau sham lamid yaim, if they stayed in the city for 30 days, so haim b'sayif, they become one with the population of the city, and therefore they're beheaded, umamaynan of it, they lose their money. Pachas mikaim, if they're only in the city for, let's say, 2 weeks, so then they're not considered a member of the city. Hain beskila, therefore they're viewed as an individual that commits idolatry. So they're stoned, but umamaynam palat, their money is spared and goes to the ocean. So the Gemara says, are you considered part of a city in 30 days? How long are you in the city that you're like a member of the city and you could be taxed like a member of the city? Yud Beis Chodesh, 12 months. So you see, to become a member of the city, it's not 30 days, it's 12 months. One is to be a member of the city. From the settlers in the city. In other words, there's 2 levels. So it's enough, the lower level, to be executed as a fellow of the Irani Dachas if you are already considered from a settler in the city. Like the Gemara says, Watanya, we learned, Hamuda Hana Mibnei Ha'ir, if let's say Shelley says he's not going to benefit from a member of the city, if somebody was in the city 12 months, less than 12 months, if he says from a settler of the city, if he's there 30 days, it's forbidden to benefit. You should utterly destroy the city, and everything in it. Tan Rabbanan, Hachrei Moisa ve'es kol asher bra, prat lenichse tzadikim shebechutzala. It says Hachrei Moisa, you should destroy it. Now, Osa is a miyat. It comes to exclude that if there's a tzaddik that lives in the city, even though we destroy his possessions from the city itself, but if he has stuff in the Catskills, that we don't destroy. Ve'es kol asher ba, and anything in it, l'rabas nichsei tzadikim shebeseicha. But the property of the righteous in the city is destroyed. Even though we don't execute the righteous person, we do destroy his property. Shlala, it's booty, v'lo shlal shemayim, but not something that belongs to heaven. Ve'es kol shlala, all of its booty, that's a kol is again a ribui, an amplification, l'rabais nichsei risham shechutzala. So if there's a Rasha that has property in the Hamptons, we destroy his property in the Hamptons too. I'm Reb Shimon. Remember, this is Reb Shimon who darshins Taimei Dekra, who explains the reasons of the psukim. So I'm Reb Shimon. Mibnei ma amra Torah. Why does the Torah say nichtzei tzadikim shebeseicha yovedu? Why does it say that the property of a tzaddik that's in the city should be destroyed? I mean, if it's a tzaddik, why are we destroying his property? Mi garim lahem shiaduru b'seicha. What caused him to live in the city? I mean, a tzaddik knows that you shouldn't live in a wicked area. What caused him to live in such a wicked place? Mamainam, it was the financial opportunities. Lafikach mamainam avid. We know that one of the great rules of advice that the Torah gives us is to stay away from a wicked neighbor. The Gemara says, in Pirkei Avos, it says that the Rebbe told them, go and look what's the worst thing, and 2 of the 5 opinions were a chavera and a shachernra, a bad friend and a bad neighbor. We're taught that a person is mushpa from their environment. Oy l'rasha v'oy l'shchena. Woe to the Rasha and woe to his neighbor. That's why Shevet Ruvain got into such trouble with the Adas Kairach, because they bordered the neighborhood of Kairach. And oy l'rasha v'oy l'shchena. Woe to the wicked, woe to their neighbor. When it says in the Haggadah, Ani v'loy malach, Ani v'loy sarif, I did it and not an angel, I did it and not a fiery angel, the Mefarshim say an incredible thing, because it wasn't safe for even angels to go down to Egypt. That's how horrific was the environment in Egypt. Egypt had a toxic environment. Today, this cannot be emphasized enough. The environment we put on children in is the biggest influence. It's bigger than the home. It's bigger than their teachers, the environment that they're in, their peers, and of course the media and what they read. It affects their minds. It's an incredible thing how it affects their minds. People choose schools with financial considerations and geographic considerations. That's the biggest mistake they can make. Most important thing, Rebbeim, Moros, they are important. And included in this, by the way, is that if the Rebbe is going to be smoking, forget about your child not smoking. You can't expect your child to be more than the Rebbe. I mean, I know it sounds preposterous that in today's day and age, even if a Rebbe has a vice, that he should do it in front of the children sounds insane. But it's still done today. Not in too many places. It's still done. You know, I'll tell you a personal thing. I have a daughter, my oldest daughter. In Lakewood, it's a rare thing to have a high school teaching English. Most of the high schools don't have an English program. But my daughter wanted, she knew that's what I would also want, that the children should have a high school education. And she had enrolled her child in a yeshiva with a full high school program. And then 2 weeks before he was supposed to start, she pulled him out. And she called me up and she said, Tati, I had no choice. I had no choice. I said, what do you mean? She said, I found out that 4 kids in the class are already vaping. I'm not sending my child. We're already in 9th grade. He's going to have 4 friends that are vaping. And she sacrificed the English education for that. And I said she did the right thing. I want to have live grandchildren. It's a thing by me. I remember when I was teaching in Mechon Beis Yaakov, At the end of the year, I gave a series of 3 classes on what to look for on a date. And I spoke about smoking. And I said, and this is 20 years ago. And I said, one thing you don't want to be is a young widow. So if you have everything that to offer, then there's no reason why you should settle with dating with a boy that smokes. There's no reason. Why should you take a chance of being a young widow? Says the Gemara, Amamar, there's kol shlala tikbites, all of its booty you should gather, l'rabbis nichse risham shebechutzala. To include that if the Russia has stuff in the Hamptons, then you gather it and bring it in. However, now the Gemara modifies this. It's only if you could retrieve it in time for it to be burnt with the rest of the stuff. But if the stuff is in Johannesburg or in Australia, so there's not going to be time to get it, then it's saved. When there's time to gather it there, by the time they burn the rest of the stuff. Amar Rav Chisda, now the Gemara tells us another technicality. Amar Rav Chisda, pikdainais shel anshe ira nidachas, deposits of a member of the ira nidachas mutarin. It's not destroyed. Let's say Mark has a kais, and he deposited it by somebody in the Iranidachas, Isnu Begava, Pshita Matar. Pasha it's Matar. Why should we destroy Mark's kais? Lav Shlalo, it's not booty of a Iranidachas. Valaditu Isnu Biracheres, one of the Rishon deposited something by Mark in Bela Kinwood. If there's enough time to bring it there, amay mutarin. And if there's no time to get it all the way from Bela Kinwood, then ha'amr chadazimna. We already said it once before. Already said loy that it's not destroyed. Says the Gemara La'ilam the ir acheres. It's talking about Mark's case, the mifkedei b'seicha that was deposited by a Rasha in the Ir Neidachas. Where the Rasha accepted responsibility. Now, I might think since he accepted responsibility, it should be as it's his. It's as if it's his. No, it's Mark's and it's not destroyed. Now, what happens if there's an animal that half of it is owned by Mark, and half of it is owned by Chatzkel, who's a idolater in the Iranidachas. Behema chetzia shel Iranidachas v'chetzia shel Iracheres asura. It's asur. Why? Half of the animal is Mark's, and it's permitted. Half of the animal is Chatzkel, who's a member of the Iranidachas. I almost said Marshall, but we'll give him a break. Right? Half of it is Mark's, and half of it is Chatzkel's. So the Gemara says it's awesome. Why? Because it needs to be shechted. And when it's shechted, the shechita is killing it. And once it's killed, it becomes a property of an ira nidachas that the whole thing is awesome. Isa chetzia shel ira nidachas v'chetzia shel ira acheres, but a dough, a nice apple strudel, half of it is mutter, muteris. The half that belongs to Mark is mutter. My timer. Behema commandoloi pligadam. That can't be split since you need to do shchita, and the shchita is like killing the whole animal, so that can't be split. Isa commander pligadam. A dough could be split. By Rav Chisda, behemas Behemoth ira nidachas, normally a nevela is tummy. When you shecht it, the tumah goes off. What happens if you take a behemoth of an ira nidachas and you shecht it? It's aser. But does the tumah go off? Behemoth ira nidachas, mauditis ani b'shchita. Does the shchita help l'tara midei nevela, to remove the tumas nevela? Lefi charav amarachmana, the Torah says to kill it by the sword. Loishna shchita mishchat loishna katala mikdal, and therefore it's considered like killing it, and like anything else, it's asabana. Oidilma came the shachta mahanya la shchita, and like anything else, it's banned and it's going to be tamei. Or maybe the shchita helps to remove the tumah. My take when Tishbi attacks, Tishbi is going to have to answer this question. Now, here's an interesting thing: the hair of a woman. We know that the righteous property of the city has to be destroyed. She has long hair that's ready to be cut. Do we say kala oimed likatzitz kekatzitz dami? And maybe she has to destroy her hair. By Rabbi Yossi Seir Nashim Tzidkani Yismau. The hair of righteous women in the city, does it have to be destroyed? Amarava, no, that's not a shayla. Hadirishiyas aser. If she's a wicked woman, her hair has to be destroyed. We dash in tikbets v'sarafta. Whatever could be gathered and burnt. There's no third step. Here it has to be shaved, gathered, and burnt. It has to be shorn, then gathered, and then burnt. So even the hair of a wicked woman is not burnt. Surely the hair of a righteous woman. Nah, what about her wig? She has a sari wig. Do we have to burn her sari wig? It's a wig. If she's wearing it, no, that's like her head. It's hanging on her sheitel head. It's hanging on a peg. So do we say it's like other property? Since she always goes in and out, it's like her own clothing which she's wearing, and therefore maybe it's not burnt. Take it, tishbi atar, kushis v'bayis. There's kol shlala tikbait el teich rechava. All of its booty is gathered into the square. Tana Rabbanan, ein la rechav. If the city doesn't have a square, then we don't destroy it. Ein anastas ir nidachas. Div Rabbi Shmuel. That's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says no. Rabbi Kiva Aimer ein la rechav. If it doesn't have a square, eisen la rechav. We make it a city square. But my commitment, that it has to have a pre-existing square. Or no, even if it has an existing now, you build the square, you still destroy it. Okay, so we could, we turned the page already, so we could already greet people in on this wonderful Marathon Monday. I'm going to be very excited that when we finish tonight, we will be perfectly positioned to only have to learn 2 blot Matzah Shabbos, and that'll be like nothing for us because we're used to you're learning these huge blot, and now it's going to be in Makis. People would say, Rabbi Weiss, you didn't have to get ahead. You could have done 4 blot like this, with both hands tied behind your back. But anyway, you'll thank me. You'll bless me. We welcome in, what's his name? Castle, and who doesn't remember his Rebbe's name. We welcome in Yaakov Warman, Michael, Mel Zachter, Saba. We welcome in Irving Fishbaum, Shelley Zeitlin, Ruvain Pollack, Menachem Umansky, Aaron Swade. And Aaron, you are looking better and better. We welcome in Shimon Klein, Dr. Guy, Gedalia Engel, Yisrael Fisher, And finally, we make a big bracha on him. Mark Frankel, I do remember your name. Nachman Chapler, Mo Kushner, Chaim Lerner, and what's his name? Barry Cement, Dr. Black, Berish Gesseman, Dov Solkowitz, Rabbi Kranz, Naftali Jablin, Moshe Lehman, Ilya Shukman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Gitzi Muller, Abe Arbach, we welcome in David Helfgott, Chaim Kramer, Michal Avram Chavin, and now.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, the point about the Peanachris, is that to say that was only made, that the hair was only from non-Jews, or is it just a term?
Just a term.
Okay.
Hektish in the city should be redeemed. Tan Rabbanan, if it had holy items of the Mizbeach. Now, holy items of the Mizbeach, if they're tmimim, they can't be redeemed. Because once they're a tamim, they can't be redeemed. So, in such a case, yamusu, they should be left to die. Kache bedekabayis, kachim for temple maintenance, yipadu, should be redeemed. It's interesting that the art scroll over here brings down sources of something that you would think I would know this, but it never fails to surprise me how many holes there are in my Torah knowledge. Why is it called Bedek Kabayis? What's the term Bedek? Bedek Kabayis, I always translate, is temple maintenance. But why is it called Bedek? So the word Bedek comes from the word Bitke, which is cracks. And it means cracks in the house. So if there's cracks in the house and it needs to be fixed, so that's money that you give to temple maintenance. So I want to tell you that, that's what they bring down. The Artzko brings down from a Rashi. It brings down from a Rashi and Radak in Malachim Beis. So you have to have, you have to be Artzko to, have that encyclopedic knowledge to know that there's such a Rashi in Malachim Beis that translates Bedek Kabayis. I will tell you straight out that I didn't know that. But I will tell you how I learned Bedek Kabayis. Michal Abram was talking earlier about the multifaceted nature of this language. I always learned Bedek Kabayis meant to search. Bedek means from the Lashon Bedika, to search. To search the hektish, what it needs. And in other words, it was a fund that was to search what it needs. So maybe somebody says that pshat also. But that's the way I always learned. But you could listen to Rashi better. Dahlia, you ever heard of pshat in Bedek Kabayis? I can't hear you.
No, I didn't hear. I'm sorry. Isn't
that interesting? Really interesting. Really. But anyway, so now, utruma is yirkavu. Truma should be left to rot. Or ma'aser sheni v'kiftzei hakodesh, and ma'aser sheni and holy writings should be yiganzu, should be hidden. Now, Rab Shimon darshans as follows: Behemta, her animals are destroyed. V'lo behemas bechar u'maiser, but not animals of bechar and maiser, which incidentally cannot be redeemed. Shlala, her booty, prat lekesef hektish, prat lekesef hektish, bekesef meiser, and includes money of hektish and money of meiser shein. So now the Gemara is going to dissect this. Amamar, hoyaba kachim, kachim is by a kachim of the altar, which is considered to have kedushas haguf, yamusu. Now the question is, why let it die? Why don't you let it be redeemed until it gets a mum? Once it gets a mum, you could redeem it, and then let the money fall for kayetz hamizbeach, which we always say is to use it for karbanas when the business is slow. And that's what the Gemara says. Mamaya musu, yiru achi yistavu, let it pasture until it gets a mum, v'yamachu, and let it get sold, v'yiplu nedeim demeim l'nedava. So Rabbi Yochanan says the reason why we don't do that is because since this comes from the Dachas, it would be an abomination to offer it on the altar. Zevach Rishon to Eva. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. Reish Lakish says, no, this is Mammon Bailamu. This is the money of the owner, and that's why it has to die. Here it's talking about a neder, where you said, Hari or lie, I accept upon myself, so if it gets lost or it gets stolen, you have to bring another one. And since you're responsible, Reb Shimon he dama mammon bailam, because Reb Shimon holds davar agayrim lemammon, something that generates money, because if it gets lost, you have to buy another one, is considered the bailam, and that's why it has to die. Says the Gemara, well, the Sefer Reb Shimon, since the end of the Mishnah is Reb Shimon, Reisha lav Reb Shimon, the Reisha can't be talking about Reb Shimon. Rather, says the Gemara, b'kachim kalim, it's talking about lighter kachim, like a shlomim, like a toida, who before zrika, before you do the zrika, is considered still belonging to the owner. So, but what if it's kachim, like a mincha, which is kachim, like an asham, like an asham, there it's taka doesn't die. Aval kachim ma yipadu, you should let it get a mum and redeem it. Aditani say for kachim bedekabayis yipadu, that only temple maintenance you redeem. Live like velisnei b'didei. You should make a distinction. Kalim, which is mam and bailam. Aval kachim, which is not mam and bailam, yipadu. It should be redeemed. Says, no, you're right. But there is kachim that can't be redeemed. And that would be a chatas. Because there's halach l'ma'ishim misina that a chatas whose owner dies has to be put to death. And since over here the owner dies because he's a member of the Irani Dachas, that's why he doesn't make the distinction by kache. Now, Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan doesn't say Reish Lakish is pshat because he holds that it has to die because Zevach Risham To'eva. The Chsiv Zevach Risham To'eva. El Reish Lakish, my time Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish, why doesn't he say the reason of Zevach Risham To'eva? Amalak ki amrin on Zevach Risham To'eva hani mili de'echa de'isnu be'enayim. That's only when it's in its pristine state. But here where we would leave it out to get a mum, kevin ishtani, since it changes, and then we redeem it and use its money to bring an ayla, so it's completely changed. There we would not say Zevach Risham To'eva. Reb Shimon, I'm a very, very technical Gemara, very different than the Gemaras that we learned the last 2 weeks. I really have to remind you that besides learning a lot, the learning of this time of the year is especially precious in Shemayim. There's much less learning in the world. This is the Bein Hazmanim period. All the yeshivas are off. Everybody's busy. Everybody's making Pesach. And there are much less shiurim and much less learning. So it's really, we're upholding the world. You know, it's a very big thing. Im leibrisi yayma v'layla chuka shemayim v'aretz leisamti. In Agdama to the Iglei Tal, it says that his father was zeicher to have the Iglei Tal because he once learned at a moment where there was no learning in the world. 1 second. 1 second. Now, of course, there's a lot of people learning. We're not going to really get a chance to learn when nobody is learning, but when there's less learning, we're from the Mekaimei Ha'olam, the upholders of the world. Remember, Rabbi said, when you learn to be Mekayim the mitzvah v'barta bam, that's something that is never, ever taken away from you. That's ours, l'neitzach nesachim. And it helps us in all phases of life. In the Siyam, which we will make Thursday morning in Yetz Hashem, I think I announced the wrong time for that Siyam, because I was thinking, with wishful thinking, that davening would be 8 o'clock, but davening here in the shul is not 8 o'clock, my shul, but you have to do what the rabbin wants. So they daven early at 7:30. So the Siyam will probably be about 8:15 in the morning on Zoom. I know it sounds like, are there people that are really up at 7:30 in the morning? But
What day is this again?
Thursday. Thursday is the Siyam. It's a Siyam Muktam because we wouldn't fast. You know, although there is one shita that if you don't fast on Thursday, then you should have to fast on Friday. And that's the famed lie that we don't have it anymore. But on Erev Pesach, Rav Chaim Kanievsky used to make a Siyam on Bavli, Yushalmi, Shulchan Aruch, Rambam, Zohar. He would make a Siyam on everything. And if it fell out, like this year, on Thursday, then on Friday he would make a Siyam on Bava Basra. So from Thursday to Friday he learned the entire Masechtas Bava Basra, and Friday morning, well, why is Reuven's looking at me like it's a piece of cake? Not for me, Reuven.
And you got your work cut out for you.
Not a piece of cake for me, boy. There's a legend, and when I'm saying a legend, I don't mean to imply that it's not true. It is true. You know, Rameir Shapiro had the Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, and it was the yeshiva of the prodigies of the world. So one day on his Hebrew birthday, Rameir Shapiro came in early in the morning before Shachris, and he said, Rabbi Isai, it's my birthday today. I want a birthday present. And they all looked, you know, the Rebbe is asking for a birthday present. They got very excited. So they said, what does the Rebbe want? So he says, I want Shas. So they looked at him quizzically, Shas? He said, yes. There were 150 Bachrim. He says, I want you to divide up the 2,711 blot in Shas. And by tonight, I want you to make a Siyam Shas and give it to me for my birthday. And they did it. And there was somebody there, a bacher by the name of Rabbi Baumel, who did the entire Masechtas Bava Basra. I believe that's 167 blot. So one day he did 167 blot. Yeah, that's another way to get a case of bourbon, Marshall, if you could do that.
I think I'll go sober.
Anyway, but remember, you can remind me later that I told you that. When you retire from the shop, Anyway, says the Gemara, Rab Shimon Aimer, behemtecha v'loy behemes bechar u'maiser. Your animal, and not a behema of bechar and maiser. So the Gemara says, b'may askina. Ilema b'tmimim. If it's talking about where it's unblemished, well, anyway, it's precluded from destruction because shlal shemayimu. It's not the booty of the city; it's the booty of heaven. Ela b'balei mumen. But if it's a bal mum, it could be eaten by the owners. Then shlala ninu. Then it belongs to the city and it should be destroyed. Amar Ravina la'olam b'balei mumen. And even though it's a bal mum, it's not destroyed. Why? Because the only thing you destroy is something that's eaten like a regular animal. Yotzu elu, that excludes a bechar and a maisa, which is blemished. She'ein nechalin b'tayris behemtecha. It still has kedusha. You can't weigh it on a scale. You can't sell it in the market. It could only be eaten with teres b'char ma'aser. That's the shlal shemayim, that's the shlal of heaven. Upliga de Shmuel, and this is in opposition to Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel, hakol karev, hakol nipte. Everything that's offered, everything that's redeemed. Now, what does that mean? That's a very quick, enigmatic comment. Everything that's offered and everything that's redeemed. My kamar, hachi kamar. Kol shekarev kishutam, whatever is offered when it's a tam, when it's unblemished, v'nipte kishu balmum, and it's redeemed when it's blemished, mishlal imet. That's excluded from shlala v'loy shlal shel heaven. The kol shekarev kishutam, but whatever is offered when it's unblemished. Ve'eino nipta kishi balmum, but it can't be redeemed when it's a balmum. Kagain bechar umaiser, that we know mibehema nafka, that we know from behema, that it's not behemtecha because you cannot redeem it. Now, he holds, Shmuel holds that only when the Bechara Maisa is a Tomim is it excluded from Behemtecha, but when it's a Balmum, it's taka destroyed with the rest of the city. So in that way, he argues with the first opinion. Let me just make sure that that's right. Yeah, Rashi says, Kishutam ve'ena nipte kishu balmum, ela nechel lebalim k'gay mechar ma'isa, hahu lav shlal shemayim ikra, that's not considered shlal of heaven, afilu b'tamuzan, v'loy matzi l'mifrach. Yeah, and therefore, v'hilkach itzrach behemto l'mu'utei b'char ma'isa t'mimim, the mishlala leka l'mentinu. But when it's about mum, then it's completely destroyed. Now, Truma is yirkavu. If it's truma, it's left to rot. Amar Rav Chisda, lo yishanu ela truma biyad Yisrael. That's only truma in the hand of Yisrael. Aval truma biyad kayin, but truma in the hands of a kayin, that's like his money. Kevin the mamainu tisarif. It's burnt with the rest of the city. Maser Reb Yosef, Ma'aser Sheni v'Kisvei HaKodesh yikanzu. Ma'aser Sheni and Kisvei HaKodesh should be hidden. Now, why? Ma'aser Sheni biyad Yisrael. Ma'aser Sheni in the hands of Yisrael, who he could eat it, is ketruma biyad kayin dami. It's like truma in the hands of a kayin, and it should be destroyed. And yet, v'ketani yiganzu, it's hidden. Eliyat ma'hochiyat. Amar Rav Chisda lo yishanu ela truma biyad kayin. That's when it has to be hidden. Aval b'truma biyad Yisrael. But if the truma is in the hands of Yisrael, let him give it to a kayin outside of the Ir Anidachas. Tinasein l'kayin shebe'ir acheres, and it doesn't have to be even left to rot. Tanan Hossam, we learned over there, Isa shel Ma'aser Sheni, a dough of Ma'aser Sheni is petura min achala, is exempt from chala, because Divrei Rav Meir holds that Ma'aser Sheni is Mammon Gevaya, and as it is Mammon Gevaya, it's not considered Reishis Arisoy Seichem, and therefore it's part from chala. The Chachamim Aimim Mechayim. Amar Rav Chisda, when did they argue? Machlokes b'Ma'aser Sheni b'Yerushalayim. The Rav Meir Savra Ma'aser Sheni Mammon Gevaya. The Rabbanan Savra that even in Yerushalayim Mammon Hed you do. It's considered your own money, and therefore it's chayiv and chala. Aval b'Gvulin, but if you made the chala outside of Yerushalayim, where it can't be eaten, and it is still there, everybody holds that it's still considered. Everybody holds it's still considered Mammon Gevaya, and therefore Divrei Akol Potter. So now the Gemara says, let's now match this up with what we learned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that Ma'aser Sheni in a Ir Anidachas is Yiganzu. Maser Reb Yosef Ma'aser Sheni v'Kisvei HaKodesh Yiganzu. It should be hidden. But Ma'askinon. Ilaim of Yerushalayim. It can't be that the Ma'aser Sheni is in Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim can never become an Ir Anidachas. Mi havi Ir Anidachas, v'tani asar dvarim nemru b'Yerushalayim. It says 10 things about Yerushalayim. V'zu achas mehem, and this is one of them. Ein anasas Ir Anidachas. So when it's talking about Ma'aser Sheni, it has to be when it's outside of Yerushalayim. Ve'ela b'ir acheres. The Ma'aser Sheni is outside Yerushalayim, and then v'askua legavah. And after the city became an Ir Anidachas, you took it into Yerushalayim. Says the Gemara, if you took it into Yerushalayim, hakoltua mechitzas. The mechitzas of Yerushalayim already took hold of it, and then we shouldn't say that it has to be hidden. Elalav, it must be bigvulin, that the Ma'aser Sheni is in an Ir Anidachas outside of Yerushalayim. But we said outside of Yerushalayim, it's definitely Mammon Gevaya. So it's Mammon Gevaya. Why does it have to be hidden? B'ketani Yiganzu. Says Ma'aloi Lo'ilam Dir Acheres. It's talking about where the Ir Anidachas was another city, V'askur Legava, and you brought it into Yerushalayim. But the reason why it's not Koltua Mechitzas is B'haka B'mayaskinan Shenitma. It became Tameh. Says, well, if it became Tameh, redeem it. V'lifrike, Damar of Elazar Minayit, Ma'aser Sheni Shenitma Shepoiden Oisai. How do we know Ma'aser Sheni that becomes Tameh? You could redeem it Afilu B'Yerushalayim. Now, even though Leisuchel Seisa means you're not able to carry it, but Seisa also means you're not able to eat it because it became Tameh. There ain't Seisa Lachila, Shenemar V'yisa Masa is Meis Pana. And they got portions of food. Says the Gemara, it's not talking about the actual money of Ma'aser Sheni. It's talking about where you used money of Ma'aser Sheni and bought food. Now, once it's money of Ma'aser Sheni that was already transferred, and then you bought food with it, it's not strong enough to be redeemed. B'lekuach, says Gemara V'lifrika, even if we bought it with money of Ma'aser Sheni, why aren't you able to redeem it? So the Gemara says, as we start the final Amid, the Lifrika did not have the Lekuach, but case of Ma'aser Shenitma Yipada, says the Gemara, this is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Yikaber, that it can't be any more redeemed, because you could only redeem actual Ma'aser Sheni, which is strong enough to pass over its Kedusha to the money. But if this is where you already redeemed the Ma'aser Sheni with money and then bought with that money other stuff, it's not strong enough to pass it over yet again. So the Gemara says, well, but if it's talking about where it became Tameh, after you already used Ma'aser Sheni to buy other produce, Ma'aser Sheni money to buy other produce, and it became Tameh, and we say that it has to be hidden, then it's not because it was an Ir Nidakas, it would be any such case. Rather, it says the Gemara La'olam B'Tahar. It's talking about where it was Ma'aser Sheni that was Tahar, that was brought into Yerushalayim from an Ir Nidachas. Why don't we say Kol Tu Mechitzas? Why do we have to hide it? Or Kegayin de Nafal Mechitzas, where after you brought it in, the walls fell down. Or Kedrava, Amar Rava Mechitza Lechol Doraisa. Mechitza, in order to be able to eat it, that's biblical. Walls, in order to be able to eat it, is biblical. Liklait, in order that it should keep it in the city, that's only Rabban, that's only rabbinical. The Chigaz, the Rabban, ki is no the Mechitza, when the Mechitzas are up. Ki less than Mechitza light, since the walls are down, and therefore now, since it's from an Ir Nidakas, we don't say, since the mechitzas are not here anymore, we don't say kol tu mechitzas. Rather, it has to be hidden, it has to be buried. We're just going to stop a moment now, Rabbi Say, to change the channel as we embark on finishing the Masechta and getting ahead so that on Matzah Yom Tov we only have to learn 2 blat. Won't take us that long to finish the Masechta. I just want to also remind you that we are looking for, if you want to sponsor Makis, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. It's a beautiful Masechta to sponsor. Or the Haggadah share, 718-916-3100. That's the Haggadah share Wednesday night, which will be a potpourri of thoughts that you can share at the Seder. And now we're just going to change the channel.